Hello everyone. In this video we will cover chapter 2 of grade 10th English literature book The First Flight. The name of the chapter is Nelson Mandela A Long Walk to Freedom. So friends, let us begin learning. Introduction to the lesson. Long Walk to Freedom is an inspirational autobiography of Nelson Mandela, who was the first black president of South Africa. This chapter has been taken from the book Long Walk to Freedom. It tells about the launching ceremony, extracts and quotations from Nelson Mandela's speech, and about his journey of life. It also tells about many other innumerable people who fought for their freedom. During those days in South Africa, apartheid, that is racial discrimination against non-whites, was very popular. This system, brought in by the white people, led to misunderstanding between people on the basis of their race and color. Today, this practice comes in the list of those cruel policies which created social divisions among the society. This lesson gives us a brief idea of the struggles of Mandela, who experienced inhumanity for making a society free of indiscrimination. His great struggle for freedom inspires everyone to fight for their rights. Now we will read and understand the chapter line by line. Nelson Mandela became the first head of the South African nation state on 10th May. His anti-racist party had come into power after many years of struggle. Before this, the ruling seat had always been under the control of white presidents. That is why the author referred to the day as bright and clear. He says that it was a morning full of hope and happiness. Days before this date, Mandela had started being congratulated for the struggle. Unforgettable history of the country was created when many international leaders came together for anti-racist party's inauguration ceremony. The ceremony took place in an open circular building. It was designed out of sandstone consisting of union buildings in the Pretoria city. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. The ceremonies took place in a lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the union buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic, non-racial government. Nelson Mandela became the first head of the South African nation state on 10th May. His anti-racist party had come into power after many years of struggle. Before this, the ruling seat had always been under the control of white presidents. That is why the author referred to the day as bright and clear. He says that it was a morning full of hope and happiness. Days before this date, Mandela had started being congratulated for the struggle. Unforgettable history of the country was created when many international leaders came together for anti-racist party's inauguration ceremony. The ceremony took place in an open circular building. It was designed out of sandstone consisting of union buildings in the Pretoria city. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zinani. On the podium, Mr. de Klerk was sworn in as the second deputy president. Then, Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the republic and its people. Here, the author says that on this great day, he was accompanied by his daughter Zinani. First, the two vice presidents of the South African nation state, who were Mr. de Klerk and Thabo Mbeki, took an oath. When his turn came to speak, he made a promise or he pledged to always respect, protect, and strictly obey by the Constitution. He also said that he would devote his entire power and will into the country's welfare. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said, today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. We, who were outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, and for human dignity. The author beautifully tells to the guests and the entire world listening to him that by their presence, everyone experienced a sense of hope for a new beginning. Previously, the white rulers were unfair and ruled the country for a long time. But the ones who are given the opportunity to rule now, that is, the African National Congress, would go against unjust practices. He said that he was very happy to host a ceremony in the presence of leaders from all over the world. According to him, this is an achievement in itself. There came a time when South Africa lost all its political and international relations for practicing the cruel policy of apartheid. Now, when there is no separation on the basis of race and gender, other nations are very happy to have healthy democratic relationships with South Africa. Finally, they have taken the power in their hands and now they were going to make the nation proud. He thanked all the international leaders for joining them in the celebrations, which is a step towards an equal society where every human will be treated equally and with self-respect. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. Mandela mentions here that it is only after a great struggle that they have achieved constitutional freedom. His government promised and assured everyone of a country where no community would be regarded as inferior or of low level. They also promised everyone the freedom from poverty, sufferings, and inequality. He then claims that their land and the people would never again experience unjust rule of anyone. Freedom should rule always, and may God shower his blessings on their motherland. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold flag of the new South Africa. Mandela says that after he had addressed the audience, everyone raised his or her head to see the amazing arrangement of jets, helicopters, and soldier transporting carrier in the sky. This beautiful scenario represented not only the perfection of military forces but also their obedience and respect towards the new government. Even the highest generals of military who had won medals for bravery during the white rule were promising their loyalty. Mandela tells that he was very well aware that these army commanders who were saluting him then would have arrested him during the rule of white people as he was considered to be a criminal. The air show finally ended by the making of South African flag by the smoke beneath the chevron of Impala jets. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika and blacks singing Die Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. Nelson Mandela remembers that on the very fortunate day, two national anthems, one of the blacks, that is Die Stem, and the other of the whites, that is Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika, was sung. No one actually knew the wordings of the black anthem on that day, but Mandela says he was sure that the people would soon learn this wonderful anthem that they once hated. On the day of inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century, and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples regardless of the color of their skin. On the day of the inaugural ceremony, the author was remembering dates of history, the time when this cruel system emerged in South Africa. It led to inequality and bad treatment of the citizens who were dark-skinned. They were even not provided with their basic fundamental rights. Because of this system, a very cruel and stereotypical society had emerged even before he was born. This system of cruelty and dark environment for a particular community was one of the worst policies ever made. Now, when he had spent 80 years of his life as a man, he, along with countless others, have changed this entire system into the one that treats humans as humans only, irrespective of their color, caste, gender, age, or any other such basis. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people, people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had brought. The author says that this new nation had become a symbol of an equal and free society, and this was only because of the innumerable sacrifices of men and women who fought against this cruel policy day and night. These great leaders were not a part of the ceremony because they didn't live to see the consequence of their courage. The author wished to thank all of these leaders just not because of their precious sacrifice, but also because these leaders were the source of his courage too. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sissulus, the Chief Luthulus, the Yusuf Dadus, the Bram Fisters, the Robert Souvekes of our time. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest of diamonds. The author says that because the suppressive policy had scared many people, therefore it would take a long time for these people to come out of this feeling and to move ahead. The author mentions that although this tough time was one of the negative impacts, but it brought about a lot of strong and courageous men who raised their voice against this practice. To reveal such heroes, that level of unjust treatment was required. He says that South Africa is rich in minerals, but the greatest strength of the nation is its people. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers fear. Nelson Mandela got a lot of courage and strength from all the nationalists he had earlier mentioned. These people had risked their lives and tolerated all atrocities. They never stopped fighting. While he traveled as a nationalist, he learned that the actual meaning of courage was not the absence of fear, but the power to fight away the fear. The man who is able to overcome his fear is called a brave person. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. Mandela says that no one is born with a sense of hatred, but the society teaches the people to hate other humans just because of their skin color, gender, religion, and many other such bases. According to the author, if a person can be taught hatred, he can be taught love also. He can be taught brotherhood also. When Mandela was going through the toughest times in his life in the prison and was being treated with cruelty, he could find a pinch of humanity in one of the guards, and this was enough to keep him moving. He says that goodness in humans can put down to a certain level but can never be removed completely. In life, every man has twin obligations obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children, and he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. In a civil and human society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of these obligations. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people over my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. According to Nelson Mandela, every human has two main responsibilities in his or her life. One is towards the family and the other is towards the society. One can balance these two responsibilities in general conditions, but in rare situations like those in South Africa, this thing was not easy. When a colored person tried to do his work for the society, then he would be arrested and taken away from his family. Thus, that colored person would not be able to fulfill the responsibility towards the family. In the beginning of the struggle, Mandela did not consider the people of his country as his priority over his family. But it was later that he realized that for standing for the people, he needs to compromise his family duty. I was not born with the hunger to be free. I was born free, free in every way that I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow moving bulls. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself, the transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, and go where I chose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. The author did not have any plan to oppose the apartheid system in the early part of his life because he lived his childhood like any other normal child who used to live in South Africa. He had to follow the rules created by his father and he had to follow the tribal customs. When he got to know about the wrong treatment done with the colored people, he decided to go against it. He came to know about this only when he grew. Earlier, he had the wish for freedom only for himself, but afterwards, the interests of the nation became his common interest. In Johannesburg, they had to struggle for even having a peaceful marriage and getting basic resources which everyone has a right to. But then, slowly I saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of my people. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self respect that animated my life, that transformed a frightened young man into a bold one, that drove a law abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family loving husband into a man without a home, that forced a life loving man to live like a monk. I am no more virtuous or self sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. When Mandela had this realization that not only his rights were being violated, but all those who looked like him had to face such violation, he joined the African National Congress or the ANC. He got so much angry that a fire lit inside him to free his people from injustice. Due to this fire, he changed from scared to brave person, from a lawyer to a lawbreaker, from a man with family to a man who lived alone, from a lively man to a monk. He changed into a selfless man, which he was not before, but became only when he understood that he and his people are being discriminated. According to him, freedom is unbreakable, and snatching it from someone is the same as snatching it from all of his people. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow mindedness. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. The author mentions that an oppressor also needs to be free along with the oppressed. This is because the oppressor is covered all around by feelings of hatred. When an oppressor takes the freedom of someone else and puts him in a prison, he himself becomes a prisoner of inequality. Hence, he is robbed of humanity and needs to be free.